Okay, so for this one, we're looking at colors in Illustrator. There's a few aspects to know about. One is that there's a lot of redundancy, and so you might have your favorite way of accessing color. First things with color is we've looked at it just briefly because I've kind of used them for some of the tool stuff, but there are fill colors and there are stroke colors in Illustrator. Fill is what is in the middle, and these are swatches that are defaults that you can pull up. These are always available to you if you've opened up a file from Illustrator, meaning like file new at some point. If you open up a JPEG, however, the swatches are not available to you because it doesn't start off as an AI. Even if you save it as an AI, you'll never get them. So just one thing, if you enjoy using the swatches eventually, just know you always have to open up a new file to get those. And the outer rim is the stroke. And I've mentioned that before, but in regards to the strokes, just real quick, you can change where they are aligned. Right now, the default is always that they stroke to the center, so they're going to stroke. Here's the edge of that star, and so it puts an equal amount of stroke on either side. This one pushes it inside, and this one pushes it outside. The corners can sometimes be affected by certain shapes will let you affect them, some won't. So this one is rounded versus straight versus bubbled. And the caps won't change on this one, but on some they will. And should you want a dashed line instead of a straight stroke, you can change that here and change how like how often the dashes happen. So there's some different things to mess around in this particular window. Now, change of stroke color, same thing. You can choose from any of these defaults, or you can add your own stroke swatch color, which I'll show you briefly. The other thing you can do is double click on the stroke and choose whatever color you'd like from the color picker. You can also, well, I'll get to that, sorry, but later. But that's a quick way to get whatever color you would like rather than messing around with the different swatches. So if you ever want black and white, you can just click back to this default and you get it back. You can flip these back and forth to help you flip-flop the colors a little bit. The gradient is up. This is a quick way to get to the gradient. I forgot to mention that in the gradient video. And you can quickly change the fill to none there as well. For these ones, you can draw behind. Before I'm actually not going to mess with these ones because they're not relevant to the color right now. As we move into the color stuff, there are certain windows you can bring up. Some of them are going to be defaults over here, but one quick way is, of course, to just open up color, and that one is signified by that icon of a palette over here. And from here, you can choose a lot of different colors. It's a little bit more difficult to choose very specific colors because this isn't a really large area. If you want something other than that, the color picker is going to be your best bet. And there are different variations for these ones. For here, you can choose not only one of the different values or hues, but you can also then mess around with the percentages. If I increase, the green, obviously it's going to turn more green. If I increase the amount of magenta, the little things like that. So you do have to understand some basic color mixing in order to work with the CMYK. The RGB, I mentioned before, it's harder for our brains to wrap around because it's light-based. So I'd probably, while you can use this, trying to mix color up here will probably frustrate you more than anything. And so I would generally say I always work with the CMYK or RGB. And more simply, you can simply just double-click on the color picker to get whatever variation of color that you would need. Another color area that you can bring up is the color guide. And these ones are going to be just based on some of your other color choices. It finds variations that will work well with it, essentially. I honestly never use this because I've already always have the colors in mind that I want. And then the swatches. These are pretty awesome. I wish that Photoshop did a better job with swatches like Illustrator does. So, Illustrator, like I mentioned, they have defaults, right? This is the same as swatches. It's the same thing. So if I want a new color added, let's I'll modify this color just a little bit more. Okay, so here's a lilac, like a pale purple tint. And if I want to add this to the basic defaults, there's one of two things I can do. I can, while it's up and present here, I can simply tell it to make a new swatch from it, and that's fine. But I could also make a new color group. So let's say that I want to make you know, a bunch of different variations. It's adding black because black is the background color on there. I can always delete that from there if my intention is never to use it. And so as I switch colors, if I come up with different ones, I can simply then drag them down to, it's a little bit of work to, you have to hold real hard, kind of like really carefully hold, and you know, so you click on the pink, you hold it, and then you drag it, and then you can make them add. If you don't drag it, or you don't tell it to make a new color selection, you can simply hit new swatch, name it whatever you like. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And then it gets added just to the basic defaults as well. So as I add them here, what happens is I get them added to the defaults here. Occasionally you might not realize it if you have a lot going on and they're short. You might have to scroll up and down here. Now this is not the limitation. You can make any kind of color you want on your own, but there's also a bunch of color palettes to choose from. If you open Swatch Library, see if I can pull this over enough so you can see them better. There's quite a few things to choose from here. So I'll just bring up foods. I always like to look at the ice cream one. And so there's a bunch of different variations of some ice cream flavors. Now while this is selected, if you choose it, you know, those colors will change for you. But you can see also they're changing here. So you can drag them into the folder that you're looking at, or you can simply drag a whole set over to your swatches and make it more of a permanent addition, or you can individually choose colors and simply drag them into an existing folder. So if you're kind of a little bit unsure about what colors look good with each other and you have a theme, using these is quite fun. There's some different, all sorts of different ones that will sometimes make your day a little bit easier. And those are really, honestly, the color basics. But one other last thing is, if you would like to use a photo as a color reference, you can of course use your eyedropper tool and just click on it, and it finds whatever color you're looking for. And once again, once you find it and identify the color you want, you simply add it to your swatches, and that's it. So basically, I would say, in advance of anything that you're doing, if you know what colors you're using, add them to your swatches. It makes life a lot easier. Just go ahead and do it ahead of time. You can always make modifications, but it saves a lot of work, in my opinion, to go ahead, because normally you already know what kind of colors you're going to be using. You don't always. Sometimes you just are trying things out, right? But when you know, go ahead and pop them in. Saves a little bit of time.